Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you an original that I wrote, which I'm calling Driftin'. So I decided to call the tune this name because it has a very laid-back, chill vibe to it. And I actually think that's going to be the biggest takeaway with this piece, is that you get to work on that stylistic approach in your playing. So if I was to play a little bit of the A melody using just single notes, it sounds a little bit like this. And you can hear it's very laid back, very easy going, as opposed to if I play it like this. It has a much more high energy, almost like a march type of feel to it. So with this tune, you want to approach it like the former. You want to play it with that laid back approach, and that is going to give it the perfect sound throughout. Now, let's take a step back and let's talk a little bit about this lesson. So I think this piece is going to be perfect for the intermediate player and up. And in this video, Steven's going to be teaching you how to play the first half of the tune. So that's going to be the intro plus the A melody. In the part 2 lesson, he'll be teaching you how to play the B melody and the outro. And you can watch that part 2 lesson by clicking this link or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for the song's name. Now also on that page are the tabs that you can print off to follow along with, plus the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this song that much easier. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Steven to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the high G ukulele, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, in this week's lesson we're learning this really cool original composition from Andrew called Driftin'. Now, as well as learning to play just a really cool fingerstyle piece in this lesson, we also want to focus on playing this piece with an intentionally laid back vibe. So this lesson provides a great opportunity to experiment with an advanced performance concept, which is playing behind the beat. Now, if you're not familiar with this concept, then that might sound a little bit strange. We typically assume that we have to play strictly on the beat, otherwise it's going to sound wrong. Well, not necessarily. If we play just a fraction behind the beat, which means that we play the notes just after the beat, then it can give a more relaxing, laid-back feel to the music. Now, this shift in tempo that I'm talking about is very subtle. If we delay our notes by too much, then it is going to sound off. So it's just a fraction late. It's a feeling. It's like leaning back into the music. And when you lock into that vibe, it feels great. So you can play around with this technique, kind of coming in and out of time, playing some notes on the beat while delaying others. But that's even more advanced again. To begin with, I would probably practice this by playing consistently behind the beat and really locking into that vibe. So this technique probably does work best in more of a band setting where the drummer might set the beat and then the guitarist or the bassist plays behind that beat. It's less easy to practice this concept when playing a solo ukulele piece like this one, but it can be done simply by playing along to a metronome or a click track or just a simple drum backing track. So maybe pick one of those and then set it to a comfortable tempo. And to begin with, you could play along on the beat, but then just start to delay the notes a fraction after the beat. And when you get it right, you'll know it, you'll feel it. So have a play around with that concept. It's pretty fun and you should be able to apply it to loads of other settings. Okay, so another thing that's going to help give this piece that kind of laid back, relaxed feel is the 6/8 time signature. It helps give the piece a sense of sway that just kind of amplifies that laid back, drifting vibe even more. Now that sway comes from the way that the notes in each measure are grouped. So 6/8 time means that we have 6/8 notes in each measure, but we count them as two groups of three, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then by placing an accent on beats 1 and 4, we get a sense of two big beats per measure, which creates that lilt or sway. So when you're practicing this piece, just keep in mind that you want to emphasize beats 1 and 4 simply by playing those notes with a touch more volume, which we achieve by just picking the strings with a bit more force. But be careful not to overdo it. It should be quite subtle. It's more of a feeling than an obvious change in volume. Okay, so finally, in terms of our picking hand, I think a 4-finger picking technique works best for this piece, where each finger is assigned to a specific string. So our thumb is going to play the G string, the index finger plays the C string, middle finger takes the E, and our ring finger plays the A string. Okay, so make sure you've got your high G ukulele, and let's get into it. So we'll start with the A section, the intro. So measures 1 and 2 should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 1 is 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so beat 1 is this G chord of A string 5th, E string 7th, C string 7th, and then G string open. So all 4 strings together on beat 1, making sure we hit that A string 5th nice and clear as our melody. That rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we're just going to hit this C string 7th, but we'll hit it a little bit softer because that's really a harmony note there on beat 3. And then when we come back in on beat 4, we play this A string 5th melody note, but because it's beat 4, remember we want a slight accent on that beat. So hit that just a little bit louder. That's going to help give us that kind of laid back swaying feeling as we're playing this piece. Okay, and then on beat 5, we just play the E string 7th, part of our chord there. And then we finish the measure on the C string 7th, which is also part of our chord. Okay, so just that measure 1 once again. Nice. And then if we take that into measure 2, we're going to play the rhythm 1, 3, 4. Okay, so beat 1 is this F sharp chord. The way we'll get into this is we'll use our second finger as a kind of guide finger to move up the neck. The first and the third fingers can come off, but we'll keep that second finger just touching the C string, and we're going to move it up till it stops on the 10th fret. We're then going to use the first finger, drop that on the 9th fret over the A and the E string, so a half bar there with our first finger across the top 2 strings, and then we play those 3 strings together that we're fretting, not the open G, and that's beat 1. And again, we want to hear that A string coming out as our melody. Then that rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we're going to add the third finger onto the A string 10th. We want to kind of keep the chord on as we do that, which is a bit of a squeeze to kind of get the third finger on, but you should be able to manage that. So the third finger just goes onto that 10th fret on the A string, and we pick that on beat 3. And straight after on beat 4, we're going to take that third finger off. So we're just holding our F sharp chord once again, and again play those 3 strings that we're fretting, the A, the E, and the C. And that's beat 4. But again, we'll put that slight accent on that chord because it's our beat 4 chord. Okay, so if I play measures 1 and 2 once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On to measures 3 and 4 now. They should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 3 is just the same as measure 1, that 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then beat 1 is this C chord of A string 7, E string 8, and C string 7th with the open G. So we play all 4 strings on beat 1. As always, hitting that A string melody note nice and clear. Rings over beat 2, and then for the rest of this measure, we're just picking notes of this chord. So beat 3 is the C string, beat 4 is the A string with that slight accent, beat 5 is the E string, and then down to the C string for beat 6. Okay, so just measure 3. Nice. And then into measure 4, we're playing all 8th notes in this measure. The first 3 of those notes are just descending down the strings once again. So we play the A string on beat 1, E string on beat 2, C string on beat 3. And then on beat 4, we want this A string at the 9th fret. We'll keep the chord held as it is, but we'll add our pinky onto that A string 9th. And then we'll pick that again with a slight accent because this is beat 4. And then for beat 5, we're not going to pick, we're going to achieve that A string 7th with a pull off. So that pinky that we've just played is going to pull off onto that 7th fret. And then we're going to finish the measure on beat 6 with this E string 8th, which we're holding already. Okay. So if I put measure 3 and 4 together once again, that would sound like this. Brill. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On to measures 5 and 6, they should sound like this. Okay, so measure 5, you can probably hear there, is just the same as measure 1. So we're going back to that G chord. Okay, and then into measure 6, it begins the same as measure 2. So we're going to move up to that F sharp chord like we did before. Remember, the second finger guides us up to that 10th fret. Drop on the first finger behind. So we play that chord on beat 1, just like we did in measure 2. Rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3, again like before, we just add our 3rd finger onto the A string 10th. And then on beat 4, this is where we now have a change. So instead of going back to the 9th fret on the A string, we want the A string 12th this time. So the pinky is going to go onto that A string 12th. We can take that 3rd finger off, but we'll keep the rest of the F sharp chord held. And then we play those 3 strings, the A, the E, and the C, on beat 4. And again, slight accent, picking out that 12th fret as our melody. Okay, so measures 5 and 6 once again. Brill. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on to measures 7 and 8, they should sound like this. Okay, so measure 7 is actually just the same as measure 3. So we've seen this one before, so we're on this C chord. Okay, but then when we get into measure 8, we're going to play the A string 7th on beat 1, just to kind of complete that run of notes from the end of measure 7. And then the next 2 notes that we're going to play on beat 4 and beat 6 kind of lead us into this A melody section, which we'll look at shortly. So once we've played beat 1, A string 7th, that just rings over beats 2 and 3. As that's happening, I would move this shape down so it's in just the standard G position, and we don't need to worry about the whole chord. We just want the 3rd finger to land on the E string at the 3rd fret. Then we pick that on beat 4, rings over beat 5, and then on beat 6, we play the open A to complete that measure. Okay, so put that together again, measure 7 and 8. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So moving on to the A melody section now, measures 9 and 10 should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 9 is 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're starting on beat 1 on this G chord. We're pretty much in position here from the end of measure 8 because our third finger is on that E string at the third, and we're being mindful just to keep these two fingers ready in position so they can land on their strings on beat 1, and then we play that full G chord, making sure that A string second comes out as our melody. That chord rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we hit this C string at the second, a touch softer because it's harmony, and then on beat 4 with that slight accent we go back to the A string second, and then on beat 5 we want the A string at the third fret, so we'll keep the chord held and we'll add the pinky onto that A string third, pick that note there on beat 5, and then for beat 6 we want to move that pinky up 2 frets to the 5th, but I would take the rest of the G chord off as you move that pinky up, land it on the 5th fret, and pick that note to finish that measure. Okay, so just that measure once again. Nice. Then if we take that into measure 10, we're just going to play on beat 1 and then again on beat 4. So our beat 1 chord is this C chord. So what we'll do is we use the first finger to play the A string at the third, pinky comes off, and then we just play that with all the other open strings, so 4 strings together. And that's beat 1, that rings over beats 2 and 3. And then on beat 4, we come in with this E minor chord. So just move that first finger down a fret to the second, add the second and third fingers on, and then again play all 4 strings on beat 4. Okay, and that rings out for the rest of the measure. So measures 9 and 10 once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on to measures 11 and 12 now. They should sound like this. Okay, so measure 11, the rhythm is 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've seen that rhythm a few times now, so that's kind of familiar. Beat 1 is this D chord. Now there's different ways of holding a D chord, as I'm sure you're aware. Whichever way you're normally comfortable with, I think this way of holding it works best for this piece here. I spent a little bit of time with these 2 measures, just trying to get the fingering right so that the transitions were smooth and the notes could kind of ring for the maximum duration, just to keep it all flowing and sounding good. So I think this is the best way, and you'll kind of see as this progresses how it kind of works. So I would put the third finger onto that E string at the second, the first finger takes the C string at the second, and the second finger loops over onto that G string at the second. So we play all 4 strings on beat 1, that A string open coming out as our melody. We'll let it ring over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we hit this C string at the second, a touch softer. Beat 4 with our slight accent, we come back in on the open A. And then for beat 5 now, we want the A string at the second. So what we're going to do here, we're going to keep the first finger on that C string because it's important that note carries on ringing. As we then take the second and third fingers off, the second finger comes over onto that A string at the second fret, and then we pick that on beat 5. Okay, and then on beat 6, we're just going to add our third finger now onto the third fret on that A string and pick that note to finish that measure. So I'll play that measure 11 again quite slowly and kind of watch the fingering as it progresses. Nice. And then from here, It's not particularly easy, but it's fairly straightforward to move into this E minor chord. We have got a little bit of kind of finger ninjaing to do, where the first finger is going to jump over onto the A string at the second finger takes the E string third finger takes the C string fourth. And then with the open G, we play that full chord on beat 1 of measure 12. That rings over beat 2. And then for beat 3, we want the A string at the 3rd fret. I would keep these 2 fingers on and just move that first finger up to the 3rd fret so that the chord can carry on ringing as we play that new melody note on beat 3. And then when we get to beat 4, I would then take the 1st and 3rd fingers off and move that 2nd finger down 1 fret to the 2nd, and then play that double stop of A string open with that E string at the 2nd. Okay, and again I'll play that measure 12 again quite slowly. So from that E minor chord, okay, so E minor on beat 1, 1st finger moves up a fret, 2nd finger moves down a fret as the other fingers come off. Okay, so 11 and 12 again, quite slowly. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on to measures 13 and 14, they should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 13 is 1, 4, 5, 6. And then our chord for beat 1 is this G5 chord. Pretty straightforward transition, because at the end of measure 12 we were holding this double stop here of the E string at the 2nd fret with the A string open. We've got our 1st and 3rd fingers here just waiting to land in that G5 position, so 2nd finger comes off as the 1st and 3rd fingers go on, and then we play the G string with the C string and the E string. We don't play the A string on this chord. That E string 3rd is our melody. So that chord then rings over beats 2 and 3. We come back in on beat 4 with this E string at the 3rd, which we're fretting already. And then on beat 5, we want this A string at the 2nd fret. So we'd keep the G5 chord on, but then add that 2nd finger onto the A string 2nd, just making a complete G chord now. And then we pick that A string 2nd on beat 5 there. And then on beat 6, to finish this measure, we want the A string at the 5th fret. So the pinky is going to stretch up to that A string 5th, and then we'll pick that on beat 6. If you can keep the rest of that G chord held as you do that, that'll be ideal, because that can all just carry on ringing over that last melody note of that measure. If you feel you need to take the pressure off that chord, because that's a bit of a stretch, that's fine as well, don't worry about it, because we're taking that chord off shortly anyway. But if you can keep it on, that would be ideal. Okay, so just that measure 13 once again. Okay, and then if we take that into measure 14, beat 1 of measure 14 we're not going to pick. We're going to achieve that A string 9th fret with a slide up from the 5th. So our pinky is going to slide up from the 5th. So we'll take that chord off and just slide up there to the 9th fret. Okay, so just so you can see how that sounds all together, I'll put measure 13 together with just that first note of measure 14, that 9th fret note. Try that again. Okay, and that might take a bit of practice there just to get that kind of that discipline to finish on that 9th fret, that accuracy there. You could even just practice that pinky slide from the 5th to the 9th. You want it quite quick. And you want it accurate every time. Okay, so once you've got that slide down, that's where we are, beat 1 of measure 14. When we then get into beat 3 of this measure, we just want to move that pinky up 1 fret to the 10th. pick that on beat 3, and then for beat 4, we finish this measure by coming back down to the A string 7th, so the first finger will go on for that, pinky comes off, we pick that A string 7th on beat 4. Okay, so if I put those two measures together once again, measures 13 and 14. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those two measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On to measures 15 and 16 now. They should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 15 is 1, 4, 6. And our chord for beat 1 this time is the D chord. So we want our first finger to do a half bar across the A and the E string at the 5th fret. Second finger takes that C string at the 6th. And we play those 3 fretted notes, not the G string, on beat 1. Okay, that chord rings over beats 2 and 3. And then on beat 4, we hit this E string at the 5th, which we're holding already. And then to complete the measure, we just add our third finger onto the E string 7th. We'll keep this D shape on as we play that E string 7th. And then that goes into measure 16, where we're playing the rhythm 1, 3, 4, 6. So beat 1 is this double stop of E string 8th with the C string 6th. So I would keep this D shape on into this measure. We'll add the pinky onto that E string at the 8th, and we'll take that third finger off as we do it. And then we can now play that double stop of E string 8th with C string 6th on beat 1. And then that rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we just play that A string 5th. We're holding that already because we've kept that D shape on from the previous measure. Okay, and then for the next chord, this D7 chord, we keep all of this held, but now we're going to add the third finger onto that A string at the 7th fret. Okay, so it all feels a bit messy, but actually now we're in position there. We have those 3 notes that we want: A string 7th, E string 8th, C string 6th. So play those without the open G, and that's beat 4. Okay, then to finish measure 16, we're just going to take that third finger back off so that the A string 5th is being fretted, and then play that A string 5th on beat 6 of that measure. So I'll play those two again quite slowly, measures 15 and 16, and sort of watch the fingering as it progresses. So measure 15 and 16 once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those two measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So once we've played measure 16, we then go back to the start of measure 9 and repeat that A melody section through once again. So measures 9 through to 15, the second time round, should sound like this. Okay, so that note there was the end of measure 15, but like I say, the second time round we skip measure 16 and we jump to measure 17. So most of measure 17 is actually just the same as measure 16. In fact, beat 1, beat 3 and beat 4 of this measure 17 are just the same as measure 16. So the double stop on beat 1, A string 5th on beat 3, third finger onto the A string 7th for that D7 chord on beat 4. So that's all the same as measure 16. Where it changes now is for beat 6, because we're going to move up the neck to play this D7 chord, which is going to transition into the B melody section, which we'll look at in the part 2 lesson. So from here, to get into this D7 chord for beat 6, what we're going to do is take that pinky off and then the first finger bar, we're going to lift that pressure off the A string, but leave the first finger fretting the E string, and then we're just going to slide these fingers up the neck so they're in position. So the third finger is going to come up to the ninth, the first fingers are going to go onto the eighth, and then the second finger is also going to be on the ninth. So we play those 3 fretted notes on beat 6, not the open G. And that's our final chord there of this measure and the final chord of this A melody section. So if I play measure 15 with measure 17, so you can see how they sound together, that would sound like this. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Alright guys, so that's going to wrap up our part 1 lesson. So you have now learned the first half of this tune. If you'd like to learn the second half, Stephen's going to be teaching that in the part 2 lesson, which you can check out by clicking this link, or going to the site, rockclass101.com, doing a search for Driftin'. Don't forget too, on that page are the tabs that you can print off to keep for your records, plus that really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer, so you can hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning the first half. We'll catch you in the part 2 lesson. But until then, take care.